Hey, look at this. It's a wall, a surface, a boundary. We use them to separate spaces, to hold up roofs, to keep things in, or out. But for as long as we've had walls, we have also felt an irresistible urge to write on them, to draw, to leave a mark that says, I was here. But what if here wasn't just a physical place, but a moment in time? A moment so deep in the past that it feels like another world entirely. Let's begin in France, 36,000 years ago. An unimaginable gulf of time. This is the Chauvet Cave, a pristine time capsule sealed by a rockfall over 20,000 years ago. When explorers first broke through, they didn't find crude stick figures. They found a nightmare, a panorama of predators, alive with a terrifying realism that feels modern. The detail is staggering. The way the artist used the natural contours of the cave wall to give the animals a three-dimensional, bulging muscularity. Who could have painted this? This wasn't a simple rendering of an animal seen from a safe distance. This is the art of someone who knew these creatures intimately. Someone who had watched them hunt, who understood their behavior, their power, their very essence. To capture this level of detail, the artist must have spent hours, perhaps days, observing them. How? How do you study a pack of giant lions in a world without telephoto lenses or protective vehicles? It suggests a level of courage or perhaps a different kind of relationship with the natural world that we simply cannot comprehend. The technique itself is a mystery. Shading, perspective, the sense of movement. These are artistic innovations we typically associate with the Renaissance thousands of years later. Yet here they are, fully formed, in the deep Paleolithic. This wasn't just art in a decorative sense. The sheer number of dangerous animals, lions, bears, rhinos, far outnumbers the typical prey animals like deer or horses found in other caves. It feels less like a record of a hunt, and more like an invocation of power, a confrontation with the most terrifying forces of their world. Look closer at the overlapping figures. It's a stampede frozen in time. The Chauvet lions force us to abandon the linear story of artistic progress. It tells us that 36,000 years ago, there lived an individual, a Michelangelo of the Ice Age, who could stare into the face of a monster, and not just see it, but understand it. Now we travel forward in time, but deeper into mystery. We are in Lascaux, another French cave dated to around 17,000 years ago. Lascaux is famous for its majestic Hall of the Bulls, but hidden away down a deep shaft is a scene so strange it defies easy explanation. It shows a massive disemboweled bison, its entrails spilling onto the ground. Raging, it turns its head to face its apparent killer, a human figure. But this is no heroic hunter. This figure is drawn with startling simplicity, almost like a stick figure. It has the head of a bird. It has an erect phallus. It is falling or lying rigidly before the beast. What are we looking at? This isn't a simple hunting scene. The human figure is utterly out of place, stylistically and symbolically. Why the bird head? In many cultures, birds are psychopomps, creatures that travel between the living and the spirit world. Is this a shaman? A priest in the midst of a trance, his soul having taken flight while his body falls? Let's move to the ceiling of a cave in northern Spain, Altamira. When it was first discovered in the 19th century, scholars declared it a forgery. It was simply too good, too sophisticated, too powerful. What they saw, and what we see now, is a writhing mass of bison, not just standing, in every conceivable posture, sleeping, rolling in the dust, most dramatically charging. There is a raw, kinetic energy here that is breathtaking. These are not just images of bison, they are the idea of bison. Look at this one. A bison, head down, muscles tensed, legs coiled. The artist didn't just paint an outline. They used the natural, bulging shape of the rock to create the animal's powerful shoulder and flank. This is not a flat image. It is sculpture and painting combined. The artist saw the animal inside the rock, and brought it out with charcoal and ochre. This implies a level of artistic perception that is profoundly advanced. The use of color is masterful. Rich reds, blacks, yellows create a sense of flesh and fur. Some figures were engraved first, then painted, giving them a sharp, defined edge. This wasn't a quick sketch, it was a deliberate, multi-stage process. Planning, skill, deep material knowledge. The Altamira ceiling is often called the Sistine Chapel of prehistory. And for good reason. It is an overwhelming, immersive experience. Lying on your back, looking up by flickering tallow light, the bison would seem to move, to breathe, to charge through the rock above you. It's a testament. Our ancestors weren't just surviving, they were creating worlds. They shaped reality through art, capturing the most dynamic and dangerous parts of life, demonstrating artistic intent and perceptual depth we still try to match. The technique itself is a mystery. The way the artist used the natural contours of the cave wall to give the animals a three-dimensional bulging muscularity suggests a level of courage, or perhaps a different kind of relationship with the natural world that we simply cannot comprehend. Half a world away from the classic European caves on the Indonesian island of Sulawesi, a discovery was made that completely rewrote our understanding of when and where art began. Here in a cave called Leang Bulu Sipong 4, we find something truly disturbing. Dated to nearly 44,000 years ago, this is currently the oldest known narrative scene in the world. And what a narrative it is. It depicts a hunt, but not a normal one. Tiny, human-like figures are seen hunting a type of buffalo and a wild pig, but the hunters, they aren't entirely human. These figures are what we call therianthropes, human-animal hybrids. Some have tails, others have snouts, or beaks. They are armed with what appear to be ropes, or spears, confronting animals many times their size. This isn't a realistic depiction of a hunt. This is a myth, a dream, a vision. The presence of these shapeshifters suggests a belief system so complex and so ancient it is staggering. We are looking at the birth of mythology, 20,000 years before the masterpieces of Lascaux and Altamira. Now we travel to a place that feels like another planet. The Tassili Niger Plateau in the Sahara Desert, Algeria. Today it is a barren, windswept landscape of rock, but thousands of years ago it was a verdant savanna teeming with life. And on the rock faces here an incredible gallery of art documents that lost world. Giraffes, cattle, scenes of daily life, but among them are figures so strange, so otherworldly, that they have fueled decades of speculation and wonder. They are the horned humanoids. Large, looming figures often depicted with massive rounded heads that look unnervingly like helmets. One famous figure is known as the Great Martian God. It's a colossal being, far larger than the other humans and animals around it, with a featureless round head and what looks like an antenna. It's easy to see why early researchers and modern ancient astronaut theorists latched onto these images. But what if the explanation is even stranger than aliens? These figures likely represent the ritual life of a sophisticated Neolithic culture. The round heads might not be helmets but elaborate ceremonial masks. The patterns on their bodies could be ritual paint or scarification. The horns, a symbol of divinity or power, are seen in countless cultures throughout history. Gods, spirits, priests, consider the context. This culture flourished in a green Sahara, a paradise that was slowly dying. Let's journey to Patagonia, Argentina, to a place called Cueva de las Manos, the Cave of Hands. What we find here is immediately familiar yet deeply unsettling. The walls are covered, plastered with hundreds of human hands. But they are not painted hands, they are stencils, ghosts. Negative images created by placing a hand against the rock and blowing pigment, likely through a hollow bone, around it. Most are left hands, suggesting the painters were right-handed, holding the pipe in their dominant hand. The effect is overwhelming. It is a chorus of silent voices. A crowd of unseen people pressing their hands against the wall from across a chasm of 9,000 years. The hands belong to many different people, including, based on the size, young children and adolescents. This wasn't the work of a single artist. This was a communal act, a ritual repeated over and over again for generations. Each hand is an individual statement. I am here. But together, they become a chilling, anonymous collective. A tribe, a clan, a people making their presence known. One theory is that it was part of an initiation ceremony, a rite of passage where young members of the tribe would add their hand to the collective, marking their entry into adulthood. The act itself is profoundly intimate. You place your hand, the tool with which you shape your world, against the eternal rock. You spray pigment, your own breath giving form to your ghost. It is a moment of connection between the ephemeral human and the permanent stone. The fact that so many are negative prints is also significant. You are not painting a hand, you are painting the space around the hand. You are defining yourself by your absence, leaving a perfect void in your own shape. When you stand in the Cueva de las Manos, you feel watched, not by eyes but by hands. Each one is a person, a life, a story now lost. It's a prehistoric census of ghosts. They are reaching out from the Stone Age, not to show us what they hunted or what they feared, but simply to show us that they were. And in the silent cacophony of those hundreds of hands, we feel a direct, visceral connection to them. In the heart of India, at the Bhimbetka rock shelters, we find a sprawling canvas of human history, with paintings layered on top of each other for millennia. Some of the oldest, from the Mesolithic period, are scenes of hunting and gathering, but among them are figures that seem to leap out with a bizarre, almost grotesque energy. They are dancing, but this is no gentle celebration. These are anthropomorphic figures in exaggerated, contorted postures, often in groups, holding what look like weapons, or holding musical instruments. Their movements are wild, frenetic, limbs are bent at impossible angles, bodies are elongated or hunched over. They seem to be caught in a moment of ecstatic trance or violent ritual. This isn't just a depiction of dancing, it's a depiction of the feeling of dancing, of losing oneself to rhythm and motion. The artists were not concerned with realism, but with conveying a state of being, an altered state of consciousness. Deep within the Ural Mountains of Russia lies the Kopova Cave, also known as Shulgan Tash. It's a vast, multi-leveled system, and its walls are adorned with some of the northernmost Paleolithic art ever found. The cave is famous for its depictions of mammoths, woolly rhinos, and horses, rendered in a distinctive bold red ochre. But among these familiar Ice Age giants, there are anomalies, things that shouldn't be there, things that disrupt our neat categories and timelines. Mixed in with the animals are strange, geometric shapes, trapezoids, triangles, ladder-like forms, but the truly strange discoveries are the faces, faintly drawn, almost hidden are anthropomorphic figures. One composition seems to show a hut-like structure with a human-like figure next to it. Another is an enigmatic face, just two eyes and a nose staring out from the rock. Their simplicity is haunting. They feel like a direct personal communication from an individual artist. We return to Spain to the cave of El Castillo, part of the same cave complex as Altamira. But here, we are going back in time, way back. On one panel there is a simple, unassuming shape, a large red disc, a circle made of sprayed pigment. Using uranium series dating, a technique that can date the calcite formations that have grown over the paintings, scientists got a result that was, and still is, shocking. This red disc is at least 40,800 years old. This makes it one of the oldest paintings in the world. 40,800 years ago, modern humans had only recently arrived in Europe. But another kind of human was also there, a native European who had been living there for hundreds of thousands of years. The Neanderthals? Could they have been the artists? For a long time, we've thought of Neanderthals as our brutish, artless cousins. But this date opens the incredible possibility that the first artists, the first to feel that symbolic urge to mark a cave wall, were not us. The first "I was here" may not have been written by a sapiens. And what is the mark? A red disc. A simple circle. But is it simple? The circle is one of the most powerful and universal symbols. It is the sun, the moon, the eye, the cycle of the seasons. Together, the disc and the hands form a composition. We have a noun, the hand, us, and a verb or an adjective, the disc, here, seeing, divine. We're looking at the grammatical components of a visual language that is 40,000 years old. The red disc of El Castillo changes the entire debate about the origins of consciousness and culture. It pushes the dawn of symbolic thought, the very thing we believe makes us human, further back into the mists of time, and it even forces us to consider that we might not have been the only species to make that leap. That simple red circle on a cave wall in Spain is not just a painting, it is a fundamental question mark aimed at the heart of who we think we are. It is the period at the end of a sentence, or perhaps the beginning of one. The red disc of El Castillo changes the entire debate about the origins of consciousness and culture, pushing the dawn of symbolic thought further back into the mists of time, and forces us to consider that we might not have been the only species to make that leap. Let's return to where our journey into the strange began, Indonesia. Discoveries on Sulawesi and Borneo are not just pushing back the dates of art, they are pushing back the dates of storytelling. These ancient artists were not just painting single images, they were creating scenes, panels that related to one another. In a cave on Borneo, a painting of a wild cattle dated to at least 40,000 years ago is part of a larger composition that includes hand stencils and other figures, creating a complex visual narrative. This is, in its most basic form, a comic strip, a story told in frames. One panel depicts the animals, another depicts the hunters, another depicts the spirits, a third depicts the act of the hunt itself. The viewer's eye is meant to move from one image to the next, constructing a narrative in their mind. This is an incredibly sophisticated cognitive act. It requires what psychologists call a theory of mind, the understanding that someone else will see these images and connect them in the way you intended. The artist is not just painting, they are directing a mental movie for a future audience. This shatters the old idea that narrative was a late invention, something that came with writing. No, we have been telling stories in sequence visually for at least 40,000 years. The ability to structure a story with a beginning, a middle, and an end in a visual format strongly suggests that the artist possessed a spoken language with a similar narrative structure. These paintings are the illustrations for a library of stories that are now forever lost to us. They are the evidence for a complex verbal world. The hunt, the spirits, the community, life, death, all of it was being processed and communicated through narrative. So, a wall, a surface, a boundary, but after today, it's impossible to see it as just that. The walls of these caves are not boundaries, they are gateways. They are portals that lead us back to the very dawn of our own minds. The hands of Cueva de las Manos are not just stencils, they are our hands, reaching out from an impossible distance. The charging bison of Altamira is not just a painting, it's the thundering pulse of a world we can barely imagine. These 10 paintings, and the thousands more still hidden or undiscovered, are not a primitive prelude to our story. They are the story, creatures of myth, of ritual, of baffling complexity. We have stared into the darkness and seen not just monsters but gods, stories, and ourselves, reflected in strange and wonderful ways. The artist of Chauvet, the shaman of Lascaux, the storyteller of Sulawesi. They were not cavemen. They were us. They possessed the same spark, the same restless urge to create, to question, to leave a mark that says, I was here, and this is what I saw. This is what I believed, and that is the most profound and perhaps unsettling realization of all. The 40,000-year gap between their world and ours might be nothing more than a blink of an eye in the grand scheme of things. Their fears, their hopes, their need to make sense of the universe through art. It's all still right here, inside of us. It's in every movie we watch, every story we tell, every picture we take. The cave was just the beginning. The canvas has changed, but the fundamental human impulse to paint on the walls of our world remains. And as always, thanks for watching. We are looking at the grammatical components of a visual language that is 40,000 years old, pushing the dawn of symbolic thought further back into the mists of time, connecting us directly to our ancient ancestors who possess the same spark, the same restless urge to create, to question, and to leave their mark on the walls of time itself.